Well, hello everyone. Thank you for joining us for, I don't know, what's going to become just like, I'll call it a little bit of Aramaic. Been feeling led to share and get back into the Aramaic studies again. I know I've been spending most of my time on the Hebrew, and my last studies have been quite involved with the um, Harley version of Matthew in the Hebrew language and find that very enriching. And I just had a little bit of a prompting to maybe compare what I'm finding in the Matthew Harley with what is existing in the Peshitta um, Syriac Aramaic um, uh, Bible. And so, what I want to do is go through Matthew chapter 5, which is the Sermon on the Mount or the Beatitudes, and compare the Hebrew that's written in this Harley Matthew with the Aramaic that we find in the Peshitta. And so some of this may be new to you, so I want to go through it very slowly. Uh, the goal here is not to, impress anybody with my knowledge because all of this is easily accessible, but to help guide you as you do your own studies and look at the wonderful tools that are available that can help us learn just a little bit of Aramaic and enrich our study of God's Word. And so you'll see on the screen here is what's called Dukrana Biblical Research, and many of you are familiar with this, but just want to show you how to navigate this a little bit. So it's at dukrana.com. You'll see that up here in the address box, go down to Peshitta Tool. You click on that and up pops the main screen that you'll work from. We're going to go and look at Matthew chapter 5. So that's the flyout here. Because I'm more familiar with the Hebrew than I am the Aramaic and kind of learning Aramaic, I like to show both of them. So it's important to click this box here that says use the Peshitta text with options. You want to include the vowel signs. There are two different vowel signs in the um, Aramaic, and that there is the Western and the Eastern. The Eastern is a series of dots that are above and below the letters. The Western take it a little bit more refined to show different characters that actually are intended to mimic what the vowel signs look like. And so we're going to stay with the Western just to because it's an easier way to just get involved with it. Then we want to show the Hebrew because then uses the Hebrew script and because the Peshitta script or the Aramaic has a number of different scripts available, and some of them are a little challenging to learn to read, but we'll get there. So just hang on, and we'll pick up off of the Hebrew and take a look and compare that with the Aramaic. We'll just put one translation in. We'll pick different ones today. We'll just pick Lamsa's, and then we go down here and we click Load Verses. And so as we scroll down, we'll see that the screen comes up very nicely here with Matthew chapter 5, verse 1. And that's where we're going to stay with today. So I want to show the two screens compared together. So I'm going to show a split screen here. And what on the top, you'll see the Hebrew version of Matthew that I've been working on, parsing it, putting in the um, links to Bible Hub to be able to look up the accounts and so forth. But what I wanted to find out was, okay, someone actually, wrote this Hebrew copy of Matthew. There are many historians who say that um, Matthew was first written in Hebrew. Um, we do know that Aramaic was the language that was commonly spoken at that time. We believe, or many scholars believe, that Jesus would have taught the Sermon on the Mount or this Beatitudes here in Aramaic because that's what they were very familiar with. But he could have taught it in Hebrew. Um, Again, we really don't know, but what we the importance is we're not going to solve that question. We're not going to be able to answer that definitively. But what we can do is realize we have two excellent resources to study that can help us understand uh, basically what the crowd received. What did they hear when Jesus spoke? What was their perception? What is there in the words that they maybe understood differently than what we understood today, being 2,000 years removed, not being native speakers. We've had, all the years of English translations and all of that teaching, and many of us have this memorized from the King James version by heart. And so what can we learn by unpacking these words like we were doing in the Hebrew? Can we do the same thing with the Aramaic? Will the Aramaic reveal a very similar train of thought? Because there's a richness in the Hebrew that I've found, and I wanted to see if perhaps we can find this in the Aramaic also. So that's the reason for my quest here. I felt prompting God's Spirit to just kind of pursue this and share this with you. Also, I have an Aramaic YouTube channel and a Hebrew YouTube channel, and many of you are subscribers to the Hebrew channel, but we have some people who have been recently subscribing to the Aramaic, and I feel that this is a growing area of interest for many people of the Aramaic because it was is our society and culture and the biblical studies become more knowledgeable and passing that knowledge on through the media that we have. People are becoming increasingly aware that Jesus spoke Aramaic. The language of the early church of the disciples was Aramaic, and they had a Hebrew background. So they spoke Hebrew, they spoke Aramaic. And we find here that some of these times in what we read, the words are even mixed a little bit. You'll find Aramaic words, even in your King James version of the Bible, you'll see words that are retained in Aramaic of what Jesus spoke. And those of you that may speak another language, I speak Spanish as my second language, and it's very common that you'll hear terms called Spanglish, where you mix your Spanish and you mix your English, and you'll hear this even by native Spanish speakers as they learn English. They will mix the words together. And I think it's very possible that there was a mixture of Hebrew and Aramaic, and whether they called it Arabru or Hebraic, I'm not sure, but we're going to see some of that, and we're going to look for some of that as we go through. So we're only looking at a few words today, um, starting with the beginning here, where in the Hebrew, and well, we'll say in the English, it says that Jesus saw the crowds. Now, these are very simple words. When Jesus saw the crowd, you'll see that they're sometimes the word when is translated as but you don't get anything very awe-inspiring from this. But what we're trying to find out is it took the time the Bible wrote here that Jesus saw the crowds. It could have just said that he went up to the mountain and sat down. So I feel something that is maybe deeper, and was able to find that in the Hebrew. That there's one Hebrew word here that is encompasses all of the speaking of what he saw, and it's ukashar ah, and it's translated as and accordingly there he saw. And this is my translation, and I unpacked it in such a way that it has some very interesting things on it. And you'll see at the top of your screen in the Hebrew, I put some commentary that perhaps this word is intended to bring emphasis on Jesus noticing the spiritual condition of the crowd. Again, something in the Hebrew that stands out from um, something that's just passed over in English. There's deeper meanings to the word. So what I want to find out is in the Aramaic, is there a similar thought? Is there anything that can tell us that, okay, Jesus wasn't just expounding a word saying, oh, when I saw them, that there's something that stirred within him, that's something that um, caused him to um, this Sermon on the Mount has so much rich information. Well, what caused him to say that? Why were the people there? Why why did he choose to speak these words to the people that he saw? And what was maybe the feeling that he had when he saw them? We're going to look and try to gain what was the feeling of the crowds when they were there? What was their spiritual condition? Why was the message tailored for this crowd in this specific way? So there's a lot of things to unpack. So the first thing we want to do is look at the Hebrew, I'm sorry, the Aramaic below it. And as you can see that this word ukashar or is very different from what we see in the Aramaic. The Aramaic in the Hebrew characters or the square script is on the second line as kad, chazah, dain. And so there are actually three words here in the Aramaic that come before the word Yeshua. You'll see the Yud, Shin, Vav, and Ayin here in the Aramaic, which is identical to what you see here in the Hebrew. So we're looking at what comes before that. There's one Hebrew word that's very long, and then there are three Aramaic words. The second line here, you'll see the same Aramaic words, but they're in the Estrangala script. And there are numerous different scripts in the Aramaic, which makes it a little bit challenging where the Hebrew has one square script. And so, you'll see above here a little um, squiggly things, and these are the vowel pointings. What's nice about the Peshitta is that here you can hover above it, and there'll be a flyout, and it'll tell you this first word is cod, and then it'll say the next word is cheza, and then the next word is dayan. And so let's take a look at those. You click on the button that says Analyze here, and another screen pops up. We're going to just expand the screen to make it a little bit bigger. Gives us our four translations. So in English, you can see what the translators struggled with. And noticing in the first part of it, Etheridge uses but, Murdoch uses and, Lamsa uses when, and King James says when. And so it's when seeing, but Jesus saw, and Jesus saw, when Jesus saw. So you see the word seeing, when, but, and, all coming from these same words. So this expands into a nice grid here. It gives you the word. This is in the Estrangala script, but where it's important here is it gives you the meaning, and it tells you that the basic meanings are when, after, while, where, and then the words see and behold, and then this word Dane is but and yet, and you'll see that it's not even really translated in most places because the when and the but are kind of put together in English. So this word Dane is actually lost in the English translation, which is kind of fascinating. So we're going to unpack this word here. We see that I have to expand the screens again. We see that it has just the basic translation of when, but, while. But what we get here is we can look it up in lexicons. Lexicons are like dictionaries, but what's important here is that these are taken from sources that were closer to those that lived at that time and taken from documents that were written about that same time as the scriptures were penned. And so, especially this one here that I opened up, which is Marcus Jastro's Dictionary of the Targumim. The Targumim were Hebrew um, explanations, or I'd say Jewish explanations written in Aramaic to help the Hebrew Hebrew language be interpreted to those that were familiar with the Aramaic. And so this is a time of kind of a time capsule, if you will, of that time frame, telling the people that, okay, you've heard these Hebrew words. Here's what it means in Aramaic. Here's what it means in the language they were familiar with and in their modern time. So if we look at this first word, which is kad, translated as just when. But here we see a whole entry here of it. It can mean when, but it can also mean as though, and then gives some comparisons as though in darkness. Um, so trying to think of what was Jesus thinking when he saw this. It uses another place where, and these are all Hebrew expoundings and Jewish sages saying that the shepherd looking at his flock, the feelings that he's having, looking at his flock, it's used in what things that have to be taught. And then there's also another um, idea here that this is in reference to a vessel, that this word can be thought of when you're looking at a vessel that is empty. There's also another one very interesting here. It says, talks about a teacher in where this word is being used, that his two kidneys became like two water pitchers, that they were giving forth a flow of religious wisdom. Um, this is really profound that the Jewish writers would make references to something here that perfectly sets the scene for Jesus teaching on the Sermon on the Mount. He's talking to empty vessels, but yet from him are coming forth. From him, these teachings are going to supply the need to these empty vessels, and that they are spiritually empty, about to receive something from him. So again, very, very interesting. So let's go back and take a look at the second word, which is this one right here, translated as see and behold. Again, we go to Marcus Jastro's and we unpack that, and we look at this word here that says it's more to recognize and to decide and even to discern. So going from the English, which just says he saw them, understanding that there was something deeper going on here, of a recognizing there were decisions being made as he discerned what was going on here. And then we look at the last word in this short phrase here, which is dying, and we unpack that, again translated as but and yet. But when we go to Jastro's and take a look at this, we find some very, very deep meaning, that this is actually the word for judgment. It's the word where we get the word Dan from, which is a tribe in the Bible, but it has to do with being judged. And so what's the scenario here that Jesus is holding? You talk about even holding court. That this word gives that understanding of judgment, of not so much in um, pronouncing judgment on them, but bringing something here. Look at all of the input that is in Marcus Jastro's. The meaning of this word can fill. It talks about God's decree to them, making them responsible, attributes of justice and divine mercy, and all of these things are packed in a word that the English just translated as to yet, but yet here there's just so many great things of Jesus, almost like holding a court, of bringing knowledge, of helping them transition from the life they're living to a new life, to something new, receiving new teaching, receiving new instruction that's going to bring them into a deeper level, to be able to discern on their own, to be able to make judgment on their own of how they're living, and reflect upon themselves, and reflect upon how their relationship with God is. And so all of these things were just so incredibly packed in to just three words that are just translated here, and would be so quickly passed over in the English. So I know that's a lot for today. I don't want to make these lessons too long, but I just hope that you can see that we're going to have some real fun, real enjoyment here, and expand our knowledge of just the setting. And as we go through these Beatitudes and talk about what Jesus was really trying to convey to them. So God bless you all. Thanks for listening, and look forward to seeing you next time. Bye bye.